Here's something you might not have noticed. Certain grocery items are vanishing from store shelves without explanation. Prices on everyday essentials are quietly creeping up, leaving shoppers scratching their heads. Is it just another case of supply and demand? Or is there something bigger, something more calculated happening behind the scenes? What if I told you there are 10 specific groceries the government doesn't want you to buy? This isn't just about consumer trends or seasonal shortages. There's a deeper hidden agenda at play, one designed to influence your choices, manipulate supply chains, and even control what ends up in your pantry. In today's video, we're pulling back the curtain on this shocking truth. Get ready to uncover the secrets they don't want you to know about your food, your money, and your freedom to choose. Stay tuned, you won't want to miss this. 1. The hidden truth about buckwheat. Buckwheat might not be the first thing that comes to mind when you think of groceries, but this humble pseudo-cereal is a nutritional powerhouse that's quietly disappearing from store shelves. Despite being packed with protein, fiber, and essential amino acids like lysine and arginine, nutrients often missing in common grains like wheat and corn, buckwheat is becoming harder to find. It's also rich in minerals like magnesium, iron, and zinc, and contains rutin, an antioxidant known for supporting heart health by strengthening blood vessels and reducing inflammation. So why is this superfood being sidelined? The answer lies in the economics of modern agriculture. Buckwheat, which has been a staple in traditional diets across Russia, China, and Japan, is falling victim to shifting agricultural priorities. In the United States and Europe, subsidies for buckwheat farmers have been slashed, making it less profitable to grow. Instead, governments and agribusiness giants are pushing for monoculture farming, large-scale cultivation of single crops like corn and soy that yield higher profits. These crops are easier to grow in bulk, often genetically modified and heavily supported by subsidies and advanced farming technologies. Buckwheat, on the other hand, requires specific growing conditions, such as cool climates and well-drained soil, which make it less adaptable to industrial farming methods. Its relatively low yield per acre compared to subsidized crops further discourages farmers from planting it. Additionally, the processing of buckwheat remains labor-intensive and artisanal, unlike the advanced milling technologies available for corn and wheat. This lack of modernization makes buckwheat less appealing in a profit-driven agricultural economy. The decline in buckwheat cultivation isn't just an economic issue, it's a threat to biodiversity and food security. As fewer farmers grow buckwheat, the genetic diversity of this resilient crop diminishes, making it more vulnerable to pests, diseases, and climate change. The focus on monoculture farming reduces the resilience of our agricultural systems, leaving us more dependent on a narrow range of crops. The consequences of buckwheat's decline are far-reaching. Not only does it impact traditional cuisines and cultural practices, but it also limits access to a highly nutritious food that could play a role in combating global malnutrition. Without significant changes in agricultural policies and consumer awareness, buckwheat may soon become a relic of the past, a loss that would affect our health, our environment, and our food systems. 2. The disappearing act of black beans. Black beans, a staple in many North and South American diets, are quietly being pushed out of the agricultural spotlight. These nutrient-dense legumes are rich in protein, fiber, iron, and folate, making them a vital part of a balanced diet. They've been a cornerstone of traditional dishes for centuries, yet their production is steadily declining. Why? The answer lies in the complex web of agricultural policies, economic pressures, and shifting consumer trends. Modern farming has become increasingly dominated by monoculture systems, where single crops like corn and soy take precedence. These crops are heavily subsidized and align with the industrialized food production model, which prioritizes efficiency and profit margins over nutritional diversity. Black beans, which don't fit neatly into this model, are often overlooked. Unlike corn, which can be processed into high-margin products like corn syrup, or soy, which is used in everything from animal feed to processed foods, black beans don't have the same commercial appeal. The cultivation of black beans is also more labor-intensive. They require sustainable farming practices like crop rotation and organic soil management, which are not incentivized under current agricultural policies. Farmers are financially pressured to switch to more profitable crops that are less demanding and more compatible with large-scale farming equipment. The lack of investment in modernizing black bean farming techniques further hampers their competitiveness. Trade policies also play a significant role in the decline of black beans. Countries like Brazil and Argentina, which are major agricultural exporters, have shifted their focus to crops like soy and corn due to better trade agreements and higher global demand. This shift has sidelined black beans, reducing their presence in international markets. Consumer trends have also contributed to the problem. The rise of fast food and ready-to-eat meals has led to a decline in home cooking, where black beans are often a key ingredient. Food manufacturers prefer ingredients that can be easily processed into shelf-stable products, which is less feasible with fresh black beans. As a result, demand for black beans has dwindled, further discouraging farmers from growing them. Despite these challenges, black beans remain a crucial crop for food security in regions where they are still grown. However, without significant changes in agricultural policy and consumer behavior, their decline will continue. This not only reduces dietary diversity, but also undermines efforts to promote sustainable and nutritious food systems. 3. The silent struggle of whole grain barley. Whole grain barley, once a resilient and adaptable crop, is now fighting for its place in the modern agricultural landscape. Known for its high levels of beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that helps lower cholesterol and regulate blood sugar, barley is a nutritional gem. Yet it's being overshadowed by more commercially dominant crops like corn and wheat. One of the main reasons for barley's decline is its limited use in mass-produced foods. While most barley grown today is used for animal feed or brewing, only a small percentage makes its way into the human food supply. This limited market demand makes it less appealing for farmers, who are increasingly driven by profitability and market trends. Barley also suffers from a lack of advocacy and support. Unlike corn and wheat, which are heavily promoted by influential trade groups, barley lacks a strong lobbying presence. This disparity in advocacy efforts means that barley doesn't receive the same level of government incentives or subsidies. Farmers who choose to grow barley often find themselves at a financial disadvantage, as they don't benefit from the economic safety nets available to other crops. Another issue is the slow pace of technological advancements in barley farming. While significant resources have been allocated to developing high-yield varieties of corn and wheat, barley breeding has lagged behind. This has left the crop more susceptible to pests, diseases, and climate change, further discouraging farmers from investing in its cultivation. International trade policies also play a role in barley's decline. Global trade agreements often prioritize more economically valuable crops, leaving barley with fewer export opportunities. This lack of focus on barley in international trade makes it a less competitive crop, reducing its market potential and limiting its economic viability for farmers. Consumer preferences have also shifted away from whole grains like barley. The rise of processed foods, which rely heavily on ingredients derived from corn and wheat, has led to a decrease in the use of barley in everyday diets. Without strong consumer demand, retailers are less likely to stock whole grain barley, further diminishing its presence in the market. The decline of barley is not just a loss for farmers but for consumers as well. Its nutritional benefits and versatility make it an important part of a balanced diet. However, without changes in agricultural policies, trade agreements, and consumer awareness, barley's future looks uncertain. This is a loss we can't afford, as it impacts not only our health, but also the sustainability of our food systems.
4. The battle over nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast, often celebrated for its cheesy, savory flavor and impressive nutrient profile, is quietly facing challenges that limit its accessibility and growth in the market. This plant-based powerhouse is a complete protein containing all 9 essential amino acids and is packed with B vitamins, including the elusive B12, which is vital for vegans and vegetarians. Despite its incredible health benefits, nutritional yeast is being held back by a combination of regulatory hurdles, industry lobbying, and production challenges. One of the biggest obstacles comes from the dairy industry, which views nutritional yeast as a direct competitor to cheese. As plant-based diets gain popularity, nutritional yeast has become a go-to ingredient for health-conscious consumers looking for a dairy-free alternative. In response, the dairy industry has ramped up lobbying efforts to impose tariffs, import restrictions, and marketing limitations on nutritional yeast. These measures make it harder for producers to expand their reach and for consumers to access this versatile product. Domestically, the challenges don't stop there. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has introduced stricter testing requirements for yeast products, citing concerns over microbial contamination. While food safety is important, these regulations disproportionately affect smaller producers who lack the resources to meet the costly testing and certification standards. This creates a barrier to entry for new players in the market, reducing competition and keeping prices high. The production of nutritional yeast is also highly specialized, relying on precise fermentation processes that are not widely adopted in conventional farming. This makes scaling production more difficult and expensive, especially under the weight of increasing regulatory demand. Additionally, most nutritional yeast is fortified with synthetic vitamins and minerals, a process that requires adherence to strict guidelines for quality and safety. These added complexities further drive up costs and limit accessibility. International trade policies add another layer of difficulty. Export restrictions, tariffs, and quotas make it challenging for countries to distribute nutritional yeast on a global scale. For example, the European Union has imposed higher import tariffs on nutritional yeast from non-EU countries, citing agricultural protectionism to support local dairy industry. These trade barriers, combined with high tariffs in the United States, restrict the availability of nutritional yeast and make it more expensive for consumers worldwide. Despite its potential to revolutionize plant-based eating, nutritional yeast remains a niche product, held back by powerful industries and complex regulation. Without significant changes in policy and consumer awareness, this nutrient-packed superfood may never reach its full potential, leaving us all with fewer healthy, sustainable options. 5. The hidden agenda behind fresh herbs. Fresh herbs like basil, parsley, and cilantro are staples in kitchens around the world, adding flavor, aroma, and nutrition to countless dishes. But behind the scenes, these humble plants are caught in a web of regulations and corporate interests that are driving up prices and limiting availability. The growing trend of home gardening, where consumers cultivate their own herbs, has become a significant threat to large agricultural corporations, and they're fighting back in ways you might not expect. One of the most insidious tactics involves the regulation of herb seeds and plants. Legislation has been introduced that imposes strict certification requirements for seed quality, disproportionately affecting smaller seed companies and local farmers market. These regulations make it harder for consumers to access a wide variety of herb seeds at reasonable prices, effectively discouraging home gardening. The restrictions don't stop at imported fresh herbs are increasingly being subjected to rigorous inspections under the guise of pest control measures. While protecting crops from pests is important, many of these rejections are not based on actual risks, but are instead used strategically to limit the import of competitively priced herbs from countries where they grow abundantly. This ensures that domestic growers, often under contracts with large agribusinesses, retain their market share without facing competition from cheaper alternatives. Marketing strategies have also shifted to discourage consumers from growing their own herbs. Public access to free or low-cost educational materials about home gardening has been reduced, thanks to lobbying efforts by influential food corporations. At the same time, these companies have launched aggressive campaigns promoting the convenience and supposed superior quality of prepackaged herbs. This narrative downplays the benefits of homegrown herbs, steering consumers towards store-bought options that are often less fresh and more expensive. Another troubling trend is the rise of patented herb varieties. Major agricultural companies have developed and patented specific herb strains that are resistant to pests and diseases, but are engineered not to reproduce seeds effectively. This means gardeners can't save seeds from one season to the next, forcing them to buy new seeds every year. This practice not only increases costs for consumers but also reduces biodiversity, making it harder to find traditional or heirloom varieties with unique flavors and higher nutritional value. The combined impact of these regulations, marketing strategies, and patented seeds is a decline in the availability and affordability of fresh herbs. What was once a simple, accessible way to enhance meals has become a battleground for corporate profits, leaving consumers with fewer choices and higher prices. 6. The fight for pasture-raised eggs. Pasture-raised eggs are often hailed as the gold standard of egg production. Hens that roam freely outdoors, eating a natural diet of grasses, insects, and seeds, produce eggs that are richer in omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins A, D, and E, and But despite their superior nutritional profile and ethical farming practices, pasture-raised eggs are under siege from industrial egg producers and the policies that favor them. Large-scale industrial egg producers dominate the market with factory-farmed eggs, which are cheaper to produce due to economies of scale and lower production costs. To maintain their dominance, these companies have lobbied for stricter regulations on pasture-raised egg production. Small-scale farmers are required to meet rigorous certification standards, complete extensive paperwork, and undergo frequent inspection. While food safety is important, many of these requirements are unnecessary for the health and safety of the eggs, and are instead designed to align with the standards of industrial operations. The financial burden of these certifications and inspections is disproportionately heavy for smaller farms. They often have to invest in costly equipment and modifications that are not essential for their farming methods. These added expenses make it difficult for pasture-raised egg producers to compete with industrial farms which benefit from subsidies and economies of scale. Misleading marketing practices further complicate the issue. Terms like cage-free and free-range are often used by industrial producers to create the illusion of ethical and high-quality farming. However, these labels don't guarantee the same level of animal welfare or nutritional quality as pasture-raised eggs. The lack of clear regulatory definitions allows industrial producers to exploit these terms, confusing consumers and undermining the market for truly pasture-raised eggs. Industrial egg producers also have massive advertising budgets, enabling them to dominate supermarket shelf space and influence consumer choices. Their campaigns emphasize the affordability and convenience of conventional eggs while downplaying the benefits of pasture-raised options. This leaves smaller farms struggling to compete for visibility and market share. Environmental arguments are another battleground. Industrial producers claim that factory farming is more efficient and has a lower carbon footprint per egg. However, this ignores the broader ecological benefits of pasture-raised systems, which promote soil health, reduce pesticide use, and enhance biodiversity. By focusing solely on efficiency metrics, these arguments fail to account for the long-term sustainability of diverse pasture-based farming systems. The challenges facing pasture-raised eggs are a microcosm of the larger issues in our food system. Without changes in policy, clearer labeling standards, and greater consumer awareness, these nutritious and ethically produced eggs will remain out of reach for many, leaving factory-farmed eggs to dominate the market.
7. The disappearing legacy of heirloom vegetables. Heirloom vegetables are more than just food. They're a living connection to our agricultural past. Grown from seeds passed down through generations, these vegetables are celebrated for their unique flavors, vibrant colors, and genetic diversity. Unlike the uniform mass-produced crops you see in supermarkets, heirloom vegetables offer a variety of shapes, sizes, and tastes that make them truly special. But despite their cultural and nutritional value, heirloom vegetables are quietly vanishing from farms and markets, pushed aside by the rise of monoculture farming and corporate-controlled agriculture. Monoculture farming, the practice of growing a single crop over vast areas, has become the dominant model in modern agriculture. While it simplifies farming operations and maximizes yields, it comes at a steep cost. Monoculture systems are highly dependent on genetically modified and hybrid crops, which are engineered for uniformity and resistance to specific pests or conditions. These crops align perfectly with the industrial food production model, which prioritizes efficiency and profit over biodiversity and sustainability. Unfortunately, heirloom vegetables don't fit into this system. Their natural variations in size, shape, and color make them less appealing to large-scale distributors and supermarkets that demand consistency. Adding to the problem, government subsidies overwhelmingly favor monoculture crops like corn, soy, and wheat, leaving little financial support for farmers who want to grow heirloom varieties. Without these subsidies, cultivating heirloom vegetables becomes a risky and less profitable endeavor. Compounding this issue is the lack of investment in research and development for heirloom crops. While billions are poured into optimizing genetically modified seeds, heirloom vegetables are left behind, making it harder for farmers to adapt them to modern agricultural systems. The seed industry also plays a significant role in the decline of heirloom vegetables. A handful of large corporations dominate the market, aggressively promoting patented seeds that can only be replanted with their permission. These legal and financial pressures make it difficult for farmers to continue using open-pollinated seeds, which are the foundation of heirloom farming. As a result, many farmers are forced to abandon heirloom varieties in favor of patented genetically modified options. Even in the marketplace, heirloom vegetables face an uphill battle. Supermarkets prefer genetically modified or hybrid vegetables because they have longer shelf lives and a uniform appearance, which reduces waste and appeals to consumers. Heirloom vegetables, with their shorter shelf life and natural imperfections, are often overlooked. This lack of demand creates a vicious cycle. Fewer farmers grow heirloom vegetables, leading to reduced availability and even less consumer awareness. The decline of heirloom vegetables isn't just a loss for food lovers, it's a threat to agricultural biodiversity and resilience. These crops are naturally more resistant to pests and diseases, making them a vital resource for sustainable farming. Without them, our food systems become increasingly vulnerable to environmental changes and crop failure. To reverse this trend, we need to support farmers who grow heirloom vegetables, educate consumers about their benefits, and push for policies that prioritize biodiversity over corporate profits. 8. The quiet war on raw nuts. Raw nuts like almonds, walnuts, and cashews are nutritional powerhouses packed with healthy fats, protein, vitamins, and minerals. They're a staple in many diets, offering a natural, unprocessed source of energy and nutrient. But despite their health benefits, raw nuts are becoming harder to find, overshadowed by the rise of processed nut products. Behind the scenes, a combination of corporate lobbying, government policies, and marketing strategies is steering consumers away from raw nuts and toward their processed counterparts. One of the main drivers of this shift is the profit motive. Processed nuts, such as roasted or salted varieties, go through additional manufacturing steps that add value and justify higher retail prices. Nut butters, which have surged in popularity, are marketed as convenient health foods, even though they often contain added sugars, oils, and preservatives. These processed products are more profitable for food companies,
which have a vested interest in promoting them over raw nuts. Government regulations also play a role in the decline of raw nuts. Stringent quality checks and higher tariffs are often imposed on imported raw nuts, citing concerns over contamination or pest risk. While food safety is important, these measures disproportionately impact raw nut imports, making them more expensive and less accessible to consumers. Processed nuts, on the other hand, face fewer regulatory hurdles and enjoy a more stable pricing structure, giving them a competitive edge in the market. Corporate lobbying has further tilted the scales against raw nuts. Large food companies that dominate the nut processing industry have pushed for regulations that create barriers for raw nut imports. They argue that raw nuts are more likely to harbor pathogens, but this overlooks the fact that proper storage and handling can mitigate these risks. By emphasizing potential dangers, these companies effectively steer consumers toward processed alternatives, which are more profitable and easier to control. Marketing strategies have also played a significant role in shaping consumer preference. Advertising campaigns often highlight the convenience and flavor of roasted and salted nuts, or the versatility of nut butters, downplaying the nutritional differences between raw and processed options. Retail placement strategies further reinforce this trend, with processed nut products given prime shelf space in supermarkets, while raw nuts are often relegated to less visible areas. The preference for processed nuts aligns with broader food industry practices that prioritize products with extended shelf lives and higher profit margins. Processed nuts are easier to transport and store, as they don't require refrigeration and have a longer shelf life. This logistical advantage makes them more appealing to retailers and distributors, further reducing the availability of raw nuts in mainstream markets. The decline of raw nuts is a cautionary tale about the hidden forces shaping our food choice. While processed nuts may be more convenient, they often come with added ingredients and a loss of nutrients during processing. Raw nuts, on the other hand, offer a pure, unaltered source of nutrition that's increasingly being pushed to the margin. To protect access to raw nuts, we need to challenge the policies and practices that prioritize corporate profits over consumer health and demand greater transparency in the food industry.
The hidden struggles of grass-fed beef. Grass-fed beef, often hailed as a healthier and more sustainable alternative to conventional grain-fed beef, is quietly facing an uphill battle in the food industry. Unlike grain-fed cattle, which are raised on a diet of corn and soy, grass-fed cattle graze on open pastures, resulting in beef that is richer in omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins A and E, and antioxidants. It's also leaner, with less fat and fewer calories, making it a favorite among health-conscious consumers. But despite its benefits, grass-fed beef remains a niche product, overshadowed by the dominance of factory-farmed grain-fed beef. One of the biggest challenges for grass-fed beef is the economic advantage enjoyed by grain-fed operations. Factory farming relies heavily on government subsidies for corn and soy production, which keeps feed costs artificially low. This allows grain-fed beef to be sold at lower prices, making it more appealing to cost-conscious consumers. Grass-fed beef, on the other hand, requires more land, time, and labor to produce, resulting in higher costs that are passed on to the consumer. This price gap is a significant barrier for smaller grass-fed operations trying to compete in a market dominated by cheap, factory-farmed beef. Adding to the problem are labeling laws that create confusion for consumers. Terms like natural or free-range are often used on grain-fed beef products, misleading shoppers into thinking they're buying grass-fed beef. These vague labels, influenced by industry lobbying, blur the lines between different types of beef, allowing grain-fed products to capture a larger market share. This lack of transparency makes it harder for grass-fed beef producers to differentiate their products and educate consumers about the benefits of pasture-raised cattle. Marketing campaigns funded by large meatpacking companies further complicate the issue. These campaigns emphasize the affordability and consistency of grain-fed beef, while downplaying the nutritional and environmental benefits of grass-fed alternative. By positioning grass-fed beef as a luxury item, these campaigns effectively marginalize it as a product for a niche audience, rather than a viable option for the average consumer. The challenges don't end there. The infrastructure supporting the beef industry is heavily geared toward grain-fed production. Feedlots, slaughterhouses, and distribution networks are optimized for high-volume grain-fed cattle, making it difficult for grass-fed producers to find facilities that cater to their needs. This systemic bias in supply chain logistics discourages new entrants into the grass-fed market and keeps production costs high, reinforcing the dominance of factory-farmed beef. Grass-fed beef represents a more sustainable and ethical approach to meat production, but it's being held back by a system that prioritizes profit over health and sustainability. Without changes in policy, clearer labeling standards,
and greater consumer awareness, grass-fed beef will remain a premium product, accessible only to those who can afford to pay the higher price. 10. The silent suppression of seaweed. Seaweed, a nutrient-dense superfood that has been a dietary staple in coastal communities for centuries, is quietly being pushed to the margins of the food industry. Packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, seaweed supports thyroid function, improves gut health, and is even being explored as a sustainable protein source. But as its popularity grows, so does the resistance from powerful agricultural and food industry players who see seaweed as a threat to traditional land-based crops and animal protein. One of the primary tactics used to suppress the seaweed market is the imposition of stricter environmental regulations on seaweed harvesting. While concerns about over-harvesting and marine ecosystem damage are valid, these issues are often exaggerated to serve the interests of traditional agricultural sector. By framing seaweed harvesting as an environmental risk, lobbyists for land-based agriculture have successfully pushed for regulations that make it more difficult and expensive to harvest and farm seaweed. Tariffs on seaweed imports are another barrier. Major seaweed producers in Asia face high import taxes, justified under the guise of protecting local marine environments and promoting sustainable practices. However, these tariffs also make imported seaweed products more expensive and less competitive, effectively limiting their availability in global market. This move benefits domestic agriculture by maintaining the demand for terrestrial crops, discouraging the shift toward marine-based alternatives. The challenges don't stop there. New standards for seaweed farming have been introduced, requiring costly certifications and compliance measures. These regulations disproportionately affect small-scale producers, who often lack the resources to meet these demands. As a result, the diversity of seaweed products in the market has decreased, with only larger companies able to afford the necessary certification. Seaweed's potential as an alternative protein source has also drawn the ire of the dairy and meat industries. As plant-based diets gain traction, seaweed is being explored for its use in protein-rich products, which could challenge the dominance of meat and dairy protein. In response, these industries have lobbied to limit the promotion of seaweed as a sustainable protein alternative, further marginalizing its presence in mainstream markets. Even the nutrient profile of seaweed has come under scrutiny. Concerns about heavy metal accumulation have led to more stringent testing and quality control standards, which again disproportionately impact smaller producers. While food safety is important, these measures are often used as a tool to suppress competition and maintain the status quo in the food industry. Seaweed represents a sustainable, nutrient-rich alternative to many traditional food sources, but it's being held back by a system that prioritizes profits over innovation and sustainability. To unlock its full potential, we need to challenge the policies and practices that limit its growth and support the small-scale producers who are leading the way in this emerging market. As we've uncovered, the groceries you see or don't see on store shelves are no accident. From the quiet disappearance of heirloom vegetables and raw nuts, to the uphill battles faced by grass-fed beef and seaweed, it's clear that powerful forces are shaping what ends up in your cart. Government policies, corporate lobbying, and misleading marketing are all working behind the scenes to prioritize profits over health, sustainability, and consumer choice. These 10 groceries, each packed with unique nutritional and environmental benefits, are being sidelined by a system that rewards monoculture farming, processed foods, and industrial-scale production. The result: a food landscape that limits diversity, undermines small-scale farmers, and leaves consumers with fewer healthy, sustainable options. But here's the good news: you have the power to make a difference. By supporting local farmers, seeking out these hidden gems, and staying informed about the forces at play, you can push back against the system and demand that every purchase you make is a vote for the kind of food system you want to see. One that values health, sustainability, and fairness over corporate profits. The next time you shop, think about the story behind your food. Ask questions, read labels, and choose products that align with your value. Together we can challenge the status quo and bring these forgotten groceries back into the spotlight. The power to change the system starts with you.